We are doing content every couple of days, but it's months out of date by the time it gets posted. So this will probably be months out of date by the time it gets posted. But I thought there was some nice interactions, which I just really wanted to. It wasn't that I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about them, but you know, if it comes up, then it comes up. But I think there were some great comments and some people that I want to shout out and say thanks for the comment, because it's great to get this kind of feedback. We were talking about Frank Zappa versus John McLaughlin, or as I should say, John McLaughlin, because that's how you say it apparently.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah, it is apparently. Guitar heroes or losers, and we were comparing, you know, the guitar techniques of Frank Zappa and John McLaughlin. Because they toured with one another, and we were saying, you know, that they seemed to have an influence on one another that you especially could detect in the music that came after. And Bodega Bonsai 7069 said, a great comment. I was at the Frank Zappa John McLaughlin Leo Kottke concert at the Nassau Coliseum in 1973. Leo Kottke, who knew, was fabulous. McLaughlin was predictably great. Bill Cobham performed 2 solos, if memory serves, and I remember thinking I'd hate to be the drummer to follow him. Zappa took the stage and countered McLaughlin's moment of silence by loudly greeting the audience. Just imagine that. Yes. Zappa's drummer also took a solo, and Cobham had nothing on him. I thought the drummer was Bozio, but it turns out he was Ralph Humphrey. Those were the days. Tickets were probably $7. I love that kind of interaction on YouTube, because that's like, you know, I wasn't there, but that guy was, and he shared all of that. So I did some research and found out it was Ralph Humphrey, that he would probably have seen Sal Marquez and maybe Don Preston as well, and that was the band that immediately preceded the Roxy band. So I gave him that bit of information. And he comes back and says he'd wanted to see Ainsley Dunbar and almost did at a Flo and Eddie concert when they were opening for Alice Cooper. But I didn't have tickets and couldn't sneak in. I also wanted to see Bozio and finally did when he was in Missing Persons. Bozio was a monster when his kit wasn't. I don't know quite what that means, but
I know exactly what he means, I think.
All right, go on. Explain that one to me.
Well, back then, Bozio played a proper trap kit. Like, it was like a nice tight little, like maybe 5 or 6 piece kit. And now he plays the SS Bozio that takes a crew of guys 8 hours to set up.
Does he still? You know. He still plays that, does he?
Oh, he does. Yeah, he loves that thing.
Yeah.
I think he charges rent, you know, for people to live inside there.
He's got homeless people living in the kick drum. So Bodega Bonsai goes on to say, fabulous drummer. Also saw Jim Gordon play with Zappa at the Felt Forum, and again with Traffic. Tragic story. Jim was mentally unstable. He did a lot of session work, was the drummer on Classical Gas. Iconic song of the late 60s. Yes, those were the days, my friend. Yeah, I mean, that's a great kind of interaction that I love to have on YouTube, you know, when you get these kind of things. And of course it took me down that wee Zappa rabbit hole doing the research to try and find out, you know, who the drummer was and what the rest of the band was like. Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of that Ralph Humphrey era there, and then again with Chester Thompson joining up for the Roxy and elsewhere shows and everything. Right. I think it's the song on there. I think it's "Do You Ever Wash That Thing?" I think it's the one that's got that crazy drum battle going on. I love that. And apparently, that performance is what got Phil Collins to ask Chester to join Genesis, and then why they would do the dual drummer things. I guess they used to Phil and Chester would do like that kind of stuff together during Genesis shows. Yeah, because of the influence of Ralph and Chester.
That was a combo that really worked. And there's the famous drum break from More Trouble Every Day that Phil Collins asked. I think that was the real reason that he got him in the band. He wanted to find out how to do that drum break. Do. I can't do it, obviously, but it's kind of like that. I heard that Chester. I heard Chester wrote that famous Phil was all Chester. That kind of, and that's good. I mean, you know. And also on that. Sorry, go on. Oh no, I was just finishing with that. That's what it takes sometimes. Is just that the constant inspiration that breeds into things that we all think is new, but it's just another nudge forward, right? Yes, it's just sort of iterating down the years. There's a guy called Steve Keeler 2736 comments on that same video. As a 16-year-old, I spent hours trying to emulate JM he must mean John McLaughlin. 40 years later, I find it impossible to listen to. He has no instinct when it comes to melodic phrasing. I saw him play with Paco de Lucia many years ago. The contrast was culpable. Paco was sublime. I very much enjoy Zappa's playing. Combination of heart and head, I say. Anyway, just my 2 cents worth. Thanks for the podcast. Yeah, I think we would sort of agree with that. That seems to be a reasonable conclusion. Is that McLaughlin's more is although he is a more spiritual and empathetic person in reality in his life than Zappa ever was. When it comes to the playing, it's Zappa's playing that has all of the heart and all of the passion, whereas McLaughlin's is all precision, and you get this idea that it's just designed to fit into that wee pocket, whereas Zappa seems to be exploding all over the place. So yeah, that was a nice wee interaction in there.
I like you brought up Paco too, because one of my favorite records is that Friday Night in San Francisco with Paco, John, and Al Di Meola. And I think if you enjoy John and if you enjoy Paco, Al Di Meola is a perfect spot to land in the middle, because I think he's better than both those guys. I think Al Di Meola is one of the greatest guitar players ever walked the earth.
Yeah, Zappa thought so as well, didn't he?
I think so, yeah. Al Di Meola is just, and he's really good at having the rhythmic sensibilities, and he's good at having the emotional sensibility. He just dances around it all, and he's fully aware of it, And I heard an interview just recently that apparently John, I didn't know there was a problem. Apparently John and Al have not been friends for a long time, and I guess Al Di Meola reached out to John and said, "What are we doing here? Like, we have all these old recordings we haven't released yet of those." I guess apparently John didn't remember they recorded 3 nights of that show, and John thought it was 1 night,
right?
And Al's going like, "We have like hours of that weekend we still haven't recorded yet. I think it's been released now. I mean, not recorded, I mean released." And he's gotten over that, which is nice, because I find that shocking. And I know that the way Al tells it is that John was angry at Al, but knowing the two of them, I'm sure John's waiting for Al to give his head a shake and then come back, because I can't see John being angry at anybody.
No,
but
I don't know. I don't know him enough to know about him enough. If you asked me what Frank thought of people, I would know exactly what Frank would think of almost anybody, because I know him really well. But John McLaughlin's a bit of a sort of a closed book to me, because I find the kind of spiritual kind of guru aspect of his persona to be kind of off-putting. And a few of the interviews I've seen with him, he comes across a bit like that, a bit kind of precious at times, and so I've kind of not gone there really. So, but yeah, I mean, these kind of feuds or kind of difficulties, they do definitely evaporate over the years, and people kind of wake up and go, what the fuck was all that about anyway, So it'd be nice. I would definitely be interested in listening to that. There's a guy here on the same video. There's a guy here called John McLaughlin 1356. I don't think it's the real John McLaughlin, but it might be someone with that name. I don't know. But he says, "I enjoyed your conversation about Zappa, McLaughlin, and their contrasting guitar styles. I've been a fan of both since the early 70s, when I bought Weasels Ripped My Flesh and Inner Mounting Flame. I would say that Zappa's visceral style appeals to the heart, and McLaughlin's technical style appeals to the head. I've often thought that Zappa blew a loud raspberry to McLaughlin in his solo on 50/50, released sometime after their joint tour." And I've sort of said in my reply to that, I think that's probably right. That is definitely a conclusion you could come to when you listen to that 50/50 solo. But this thing about heart and head is quite interesting. That's come up a couple of times in this conversation, and it's an interesting way to look at it, because Zappa was not a heartful person. In his real life, he wasn't an empathetic or nice to everybody. He was always very attentive to most people, but he wasn't sentimental at all. So the fact that people see that and feel that in his guitar playing, there's I always felt there was a kind of spirituality in Zappa's guitar playing that wasn't anywhere else in his work. I could easily be transported to realms of spirituality by listening to Hot Rats or any of the sort of big solo albums where there are a lot of solos. I guess One Size Fits All would be another one. Roxy and Elsewhere, there's some great stuff on that. And I always felt it was really weird. And it's these conversations on that video brought that home to me. Yeah, there is a certain aspect of that. Yeah.
I do understand that appeal too, and I wonder if that's maybe reflective of their personalities then, because some people need the outlet, right? So maybe Frank had a hard time expressing himself, and then he only could do it with a guitar, so that's where that came from. And then John is meditating his way through life and perfectly connected to the universe. Then he's going like his guitar is a weapon for him, like he finds that he doesn't feel a need to express himself cosmically because he does it continuously. So maybe he sees the guitar as a tool, and Frank maybe saw the guitar as the meditation, because I feel that, because when you hear Frank's guitar solos, they're not planned. There's no intention. It's what's happening in the moment. It just comes out of him. Whereas I've never felt that way about John. But it's John's compositions, though. I think like the spiritual aspect. Like if I listen to that album, like My Visions Beyond, with George Martin produced it and whatnot, whatever that one's called. Or I think it's called the Emerald Visions or Emerald. But there's like an orchestral one that that Sir George Martin helped produce.
Yeah.
That one there, I think, outside the guitar solos and outside the Jean-Luc Ponty violin, it does feel very spiritual to me. It feels like I'm being like levitated by Gail Moran's voice and everything.
Right.
And she's wonderful too. But as a keyboardist and a singer, Gail Moran is, I think, underrated, or maybe I just wasn't around enough to hear about it, but no one seems to talk about her. But she has the chops of Jan Hammer and Chick Corea on the keyboards, and she's got that beautiful voice of Flora Purim, and she was that's Chick Corea's wife, Gail Moran,
right?
Which I thought was kind of neat. That Chick's wife was playing in like his biggest competition band, Mahavishnu.
Yeah. I went and listened to those albums because we talked about that on that section of the podcast. So I realised I didn't really have any sort of memory of listening to those, although I definitely have. So I went back and listened to them again, and it was a strange experience because it's still that there's something about McLaughlin's work that I don't like, except with Shakti. When he's got the
Shakti's great.
The earlier version of Shankar with him, I think there's something magical happens there. They obviously feed off one another in a way that is absolutely unparalleled, really. Sadly, Shankar's gone crazy, and I was looking at him yesterday. He was that Epidemics album that I talked about, and someone had done a review of it as one of the 10 worst albums ever produced, and I went, yeah, it was, but they said that was the point where Shankar went off. Something happened to him, whether he had a bad trip or something, I don't know, but the Epidemics album marks the end of the thing that brought him to that point. It was a really weird album. But yeah, the Shakti stuff, that's the John McLaughlin stuff that I hold on to. The rest of it, I can leave it. It doesn't do anything for me. So
I understand.
But maybe in 10 years' time, there'll become a point where I go, what have I been missing all these years?
Yeah, and that's I resonate with that quite a bit. That the Shakti band is probably his best stuff, and it sounds like the way he carries himself. Like it feels like when I'm listening to it, I hear Mahavishnu, not the band, but like the meaning behind the name.
Yeah,
he did a Shakti-like record a couple years ago called "So What" or something like that.
Did he?
Called yeah. You might hear it and be like, nah, it's not Shakti-like, it's just Indian.
Yeah.
But it was one that I listened to it and then I tried to turn it off because it sounded too special to just listen to. So I had to like revisit it like a month or two later when I knew I was in the right headspace to properly absorb something of this magnitude. Mm-hmm. It's called Is That So? And it's got Zakir Hussain and Shankar Mahadevan. Maybe that's the guy you're talking about that's lost his mind. Is that the Shankar?
No, it's L. Shankar is the Shankar, the violinist. It's quite a common name in India, I believe.
Yeah, just like good old Ravi, right?
Yeah. McLaughlin. It's called, what's the album called? I'm just taking a note here.
Is That So? With a question mark on the end.
I think I came across that one, but I'll have another look.